Hello, this is Daniel at HAL Beam Design and welcome to furniture making in -23°C. In this video you will see me freeze and almost get frostbite, and then I will show you how to overcome problems connected to furniture making and living your ordinary life in winter conditions. Enjoy. I confess right away. I bought this rather small slab of German oak on Cyber Monday a couple of months ago, even though I have a lot of wood already. In my defense, it looked like it needed saving and it only cost me about $40, which is important later in this video. The idea I have is to make a table where I have two slabs next to each other without filling the middle with epoxy to hold them together. Just like a river table, but without the river part. And then I start to remove the bark on the edges, which is Woodworking YouTube's response to pimple popping videos on YouTube. Very satisfying to watch. For some people. I myself think it's a very strange to spend the time on watching people pop other people's pimples, but there are people for everything. There are even people like you who watch my videos, and currently I have around 220,000 views on my videos and soon 2,000 subscribers, which I never thought would happen a year ago. To remove the last bits of bark I use my favorite tool, the angle grinder. There are so many different accessories for it, which gives the tool so many different possibilities to do different things. If there are a tool I can recommend buying for a homeowner, the angle grinder is on my top 3 list. When I've cleaned the bark, I choose which side should be up on the tabletop. I choose the sides that have the least bark inclusions, and when I do this I see that I have damaged one of the boards a little bit. By pure luck I find the piece that came off, which will make it much easier to repair. Woodworking is a lot about hiding your mistakes. I could have easily chosen to shorten this table by a few centimeters, but I really want the table to be as large as possible. In addition to this, you viewers like to see before and after pictures, which is also very clear from how popular restoration videos are on YouTube. I myself consume a lot of restoration videos and will probably make one quite soon. Those of you who follow me on Instagram will get a good heads up. In the beginning of the video I said that I didn't want to use epoxy to make this a river table. Instead I will use epoxy to fill in all these holes or bark inclusions that I can clean out with my chisel. Just like an inverted pimple popping video when you think about it. You really don't have to remove the bark. However, it is difficult to get the bark to remain for many years as the wood twists and adapts to the humidity in the different seasons. So instead of the bark coming off its own, I remove it and fill it with a material that would probably remain intact for at least 10,000 years, just to be safe. Then I saw what should be the middle of the board at 90 degrees with my jigsaw, as I want the boards as close to each other as possible later. Then I start to fix the corner of this mini slab. I have to do that indoors as the glue I use will not harden outdoors right now as it is too cold. Always check the working temp on your glue. As the tabletop will come into contact with water in its future life, I use the glue Titebond 3. Titebond 3 is waterproof and food safe, and it is the same glue I use in my video when I make an end grain cutting board with very simple tools. I take my time to really spread the glue on the parts to be glued together, for natural reasons and my reputation as a woodworker. When I've placed the parts and I'm satisfied, I fasten them with clamps so that the glue can harden properly indoors during the night. The next day the glue has dried and it's time to shovel away all the snow. During the period I built this table, it snowed between 10 to 35 centimeters per night and down to 23°C some periods, which you will see later in this video. Just when this clip is played it is -15 degrees, which is usually the limit when you put the shorts in the deep part of the wardrobe and start to wear long pants outdoors here in Sweden. Then I continue to saw the middle edge of the other part of the tabletop, so that both are 90 degrees to each other. After I saw this, I sand them quickly, and then I sand the corner I repaired to see if the repair seems to have gone well. I was satisfied with the result of the repair, and then I will mill the center edges 45 degrees with my router. I do this several times, a few millimeters at a time, so as not to create any new damage to the tabletop. The center edges became exactly as I visualized them to be. This was the only thing I did on the table that day, and then the next day I started shoveling the snow again. Now it's minus 20 degrees and I'm starting to think about having double gloves. And today I start by making the legs for the table. This piece of oak cost me $85, which is twice as much as the entire tabletop. I saw this board down into 3 parts to be able to create sturdy legs and a minimal underframe for the table. Many people think that you need lots of expensive tools to start to create furniture. Watch my other videos and you will learn that you don't need expensive tools to create nice things. I put together the 2 wide pieces of oak I saw down using tape, Titebond 3 and clamps. Tape is a very underrated product when it comes to assembling wood. In this case, the tape makes it very easy to glue these together straight and don't spill glue everywhere. When the glue has dried later in the afternoon, it is time to saw down the pieces of the different parts of the legs. All the angles I saw here will be 15 degrees, and in my experience is a pretty good angle to have your legs in to be robust. A few seconds ago I said that you don't need expensive tools to make furniture, and then I present you my expensive DeWalt miter saw, which is a bit ironic, but I tell you that you don't need a DeWalt miter saw when you start making things. I started with a cheap Ryobi miter saw and hand tools, and I bought this DeWalt saw on Facebook Marketplace for around $130, which is less than half of the price of a saw like this. With these parts I will build 2 pair of legs, and I will put them together with 10mm thick wooden dowels and Titebond 2, as my Titebond 3 has run out and it's not super easy to get a hold of Titebond 3 in Sweden. To make holes in the pieces for the wooden dowels, I start with a smaller drill and then use a larger one so that it is easier for the drill, as it does not have to remove as much material with each drill. To mark where the holes on the other piece needs to be, I insert these metal studs that leave a mark on the other piece of the legs. This makes it very easy to do it yourself without owning tools such as a Festool Domino or similar tools. If you intend to stay on YouTube for a while after you watch this whole video, I can recommend that you watch a video comparing different assembly techniques for wood. People really underestimate the strength of wooden dowels along with wood glue. I fill all the holes with as much glue as possible, and I place glue in all the joints on both sides to get as good glue joint as possible, as the legs need to be able to hold the weight of both the tabletop and maybe other things that are placed on top of the table. While the table legs dry, I mill the edges for the parts that will hold the tabletop together. The day after, I was going to start early in the morning with power carving the legs for the table, and the door lock was frozen. This makes me think about why people chose to settle here in Scandinavia several thousand years ago. Thank you for choosing Scandinavia. This was the coldest day, which you will see. It is not possible to compare this cold with those who live up in Siberia, who also post YouTube clips from their everyday life, when they fire up their cars with small fires in their engines and they store food outside in homemade ice cubes. As you can see from my facial expression, I'm experiencing total joy. Power carving is one of my favorite things with woodworking, as it is a really unique way to create cool patterns and shapes with. Just like in one of my previous videos where I create a sideboard with a leopard pattern using the same tools I use now. My idea is to create a pair of really unique legs for the tabletop. After carving and sanding the legs, I have found that I removed too much material on the place and exposed one of the holes for the wooden dowels that hold the legs together. To fix this, I start by mixing Titebond 2 with sanding dust from my sander, and this I mix together and fill the hole with to get rid of the void. Then I drill a smaller hole in the repair to be able to put in a piece of wood that matches the grain structure of the leg. If you've learned something and watched this video so far, I would be really happy if you subscribe to my channel. I will really appreciate it. My goal with this is to show you that you really don't need expensive tools to create nice things, and I will continue to make more videos, and I will have a lot coming interesting builds for you. Thanks for watching this clip halfway through, and watch now as I fix this hole perfectly. In order not to leave holes in the table and to stabilize the tabletop, I will fill them with epoxy. The epoxy comes from Epoxy, which is a new epoxy for me, and the only time I came into contact with it before is when I watched the Danish Jesper Makes on YouTube. The two substances are mixed together in a 2:1 ratio by weight. I start by carefully brushing the largest hole with epoxy on the walls to prevent bubbles from settling in the edges. Then I brush all the small cracks of the board, and the fun thing about all this is that I spend a lot of time on what should be the underside of the table, where probably no one will ever see this feature of the table. I appreciate working with epoxy. The epoxy must later harden for at least 72 hours in about 20 degrees, and in the meantime I finish the parts for the base and drill holes for the furniture bolts that will be screwed into the threaded inserts that will sit in the tabletop itself. All the products I use in this video I link to in the description of this video. These are affiliate links, which means if you buy something after clicking on the links, I get a small percentage on the sale. This is a simple way to support me in my work to create unique products on YouTube. I sand the table legs one last time after I created the holes for the bolts. Then I saw the tabletops to its final dimensions and choose to remove the live edge on the outer edges of the table, as I want the exact same profile around the entire tabletop. A old truism is that children's heads are always looking to touch sharp edges on tabletops, often with devastating consequences. Therefore, I round off the corners. After I round off the corners, I will shape the profile of the tabletop with my router. I round off the top side of the tabletop, and the bottom side of the tabletop I route at a 45-degree angle. And now, while I'm showing you how to change ball bearings on a router bit, I'll tell you about my 1000 subscriber giveaway. On the 22nd of November 2023 I was accepted by YouTube's partner program. So thanks to you viewers and above all my subscribers, my videos now generate revenue from advertising on all my clips. Therefore I have decided to have a 1000 subscriber giveaway as a thank you. Head over to my Instagram HalBeamDesign for details. Prices include fine and grain cutting boards, Swedish rivets and cutting board conditioner. Everything is completely made by me and will be completely free, as I will pay for the shipping with the income from your views. Thanks for watching, and take a chance to win prizes in my first giveaway. In addition to this, JeffreyKnots4148 was the first one to comment seals on my very first YouTube video. Hence I will send you a prize of your own. Good job, Jeffrey Knots. Finally, the entire tabletop is sanded up to 180 grit before it's time to treat it with a Hardwax Oil. If there is something I can really recommend for beginner woodworkers, it is to buy really good sandpaper when you're gonna sand your projects. Only a few % more expensive, but will make such an incredible difference as they last much longer and make it easier for the sander to suck up the sanding dust. I start by treating the legs of the table with Hardwax Oil. I apply this with a normal white pad where I rub the oil into the wood and then wipe off the excess with a white cloth after a short while. After the legs, I wax the parts for the base of the table. The wax I use is a Swedish brand that I think is very similar to Osmo's Hardwax Oil. It is mostly marketed for use on like wooden floors, but it can just as well be used on furniture. And now it's finally time to put the first layer of wax on the tabletop. This is something I always look forward to and what you can often see that your viewers like too. There is something very special about seeing the wood come to life. I start by putting the wax on the underside of the table, as I will later turn the tabletop over so I can wax the entire tabletop directly to prevent the wood from absorbing moisture from one side, and this prevents the tabletop from warping. The wax works very well with the epoxy. Just a shame that the only people who are likely to see it are you viewers here on my YouTube channel, as it is the underside of the table. I personally like how the edges turned out on this tabletop, but I'm interested to know what you think about it too. Start your comment or question with live edge if you think I should have saved the live edge on the tabletop, or start with dead edge if you think my edge is better than a live edge. I wipe off the excess on the underside and turn it over and wax in the upper side. If you haven't watched this video in 4K so far, I really recommend switching to 4K now. The Hardwax oil looks very glossy now right after you apply it and wipe off the first excess, which is nice, but it will disappear into the wood while the wax dries for at least 24 hours. This is how it looks after it dries after the first application. Immediately after, I apply a new layer of wax on both the bottom and the top side, which gives the tabletop a much better finish that will be very resistant to stains and spills. You can now see the result after it has dried, and there is a big difference in shine compared to the first layer. To assemble the table, I use threaded inserts and furniture bolts. These allow you to disassemble the furniture and reassemble it very easily without damaging the wood later. Also, this assembly will allow the wood to move a little bit with the seasons depending on the humidity. Links to buy this can be found in the description of the video. I've placed out the parts for the underside of the table and mark out where to drill the holes for all the threaded inserts by making a small hole with a drill bit. Earlier I mentioned that the wood for the tabletop cost me about $40 and the wood for the table legs cost me about $80. In addition to this, I have spent about $130 on glue, epoxy, Hardwax oil, bolts and threaded inserts, wooden dowels and etc. This means that the material cost for this table is around $250, without counting for wear and tear on tools, router bits, sandpaper and my working time to build the whole table. The table with this hardware will last several generations. Hopefully parts of the table will remain after several thousand years thanks to the epoxy I put in on the underside. When I started making furniture and especially cutting boards, I began to understand how fake and mass-produced the big chains furniture is. Because it struck me that no matter how you look at it, they really need to skimp on the material or labor costs to get the prices down to where they are today. This furniture will also need to be replaced often as the quality is worse, which means that if you decide to buy a cheap table, it will be more expensive than you thought, as you will have to replace it more often. The thing I want to say is buy handmade furniture. You deserve it. Assembly becomes very easy with these bolts and threaded insert in the tabletop. You also don't have to be a special woodworking guru and screw down the bolts with a hand tool like many ASMR videos. Power tools are among the best things that have ever happened. Use them. Before we go on to the reveal of this table, I want to thank you for watching this entire clip. If you have watched this far, you might as well subscribe. Do you remember what went wrong with this table? Here is the result of my first repair. And here is the second repair. Here are the pictures of the table. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions, please comment on the video or message me on my Instagram, HalBeamDesign. Buy yourself a power tool. You deserve it. See you soon. Bye.